Well, good morning, and hope you're well and enjoying a little cooler weather, right? I love that. I love all the rain we've had, but that autumn is a season that speaks to me, so I like it. But anyway, I hope you're good, and then we'll just talk a little more about music. We started out with the biblical references to music, and then last week, just the genres that we run into in church, as a traditional or spirituals, or the contemporary. And then I thought just one more week of background information, and it's the music itself. A lot of music really originated with the church. We went through the Dark Ages and the medieval period where only the churches were truly only functioning and still providing music. And while we're often grateful for the churches that they did that, we don't realize how controlling that they were. And so music had a tough time really branching out and reaching people. Really the first music was, and it had to be set to, first you needed permission, and then it had to be set to, they would give you a piece of music maybe from a psalm, and then this is a chant originated from this, and you could just sing that part of the psalm. And it was restricted to a certain range of pitches. The notation that we use in music, where we have what's called a G clef and an F clef, even the range that you could sing in. And so that became part of the first notations of music. So without even knowing it, we were already creating this beautiful language. But like most things, it didn't start out as beautiful as it is. It was almost begrudgingly done. And so we have then in music, we have these periods of time, which we call, was it the Renaissance, which was after the medieval, and then we have the Baroque, and what's called the Classical, and then what's called the Romantic, and then anything after that we pretty much just call modern or contemporary, even though we're talking, maybe 1900, this is contemporary. But still, each one of them brought something to music. We know that Bach was probably our most famous composer from the Baroque period, and his music he was, I guess, just in a whole nother world. He was just leagues ahead of everyone. But what I like is we have the music, and we know why they wrote the music and how it was constrained. I think it's like this. So whatever, bum 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 bum. It's very happy, but it's also very rigid, and there's really not too much emotion in it. But Bach himself was a very joyous man. He had a huge family, and he taught choir, and he hated teaching choir because he used to talk about how the kids wouldn't come to practice, they wouldn't pay attention, they wouldn't respect him. And he absolutely sometimes he just wouldn't go and teach, but it was required. Of course, this comes down from the church. You have to go and teach them. There's probably that more famous account where he went to I think it was their king or their prince, whoever was in charge, and he was complaining because he wasn't getting paid for the weddings that he was paid for. And other people were being asked to play the weddings, and he resented that. He said, if I'm the organist, I should play the wedding and I should get the money. And I love that stuff because, we're really just the same. Maybe we have different devices or different, whatever we take for granted. Our core is, as a human, we're really always pretty much in the same place, which is, I think, quite beautiful. I think probably the thing about Bach and his music is there was no, what we call in music a third, which those are almost all thirds. You could only use fourths. So it would be like, that's the sound of that old medieval or Baroque music. And it was because that was considered a perfect interval. A third was considered an imperfect interval, so they frowned on it because they didn't, it was the British or the English that reintroduced the third. So a characteristic of their music, so when we sing Let all mortals flesh be silent, This is a song written for chant, and it's following the natural rises and falls of the human voice. And so they just needed to know that it was going to be between here and here, and that song could pretty much fit in. Gradually, of course, they extended and expanded everything. But basically, that's why that music sounds like that, and that's why Bach sounds like that. And then we went into the classical period, and this is like it was Mozart, right? We think of Mozart with the classical period, and the music of the classical period could have one emotion. So it could be a joyful piece or it could be a sad piece, but you could not have a joyful and a sad piece. There's one emotion. It was called the fixed idea, and so they mostly liked the happy songs. And I learned this in school. I thought this was terrific. If you think about when they were living, there was plague. There was just a lot of death. There was uncertainty. There was warfare. And so when it came to music, well, we would like something to cheer us up. And so this is what Mozart, who doesn't smile? Right? It's just pleasant, and it's easy to listen to. So here's music as an antidote to the realities of the world. It sort of sounds like our world, doesn't it? But okay, and then, so this is the classical period. And then comes the Romantic era, and that's where music becomes emotional. It was just driven by ups and downs and highs and lows, and it's really, I think, probably the music that we most like. I know that when I play a song or we're doing something, I look for music that starts out peaceful, gets intense, and even over the top, especially for religious music where you're shouting joy and praise and then comes back down and ends peacefully. To me, this is a natural rhythm. It's a rhythm of life, and to me, it's a rhythm of music. And my favorite, I guess, composer from the Romantic period, although he was not technically romantic, he brought it in, was Beethoven. And all of his music, would you think that also goes with this same piece? And what a difference. So here he has now this combining of all the things that the church nurtured, but then people pushed the limits of. And by this time, the church was at odds with music, and they were trying to be more controlling. That's why we have operas. The church responded with the cantata. Anything that was in the world, the church responded with something that was in the church. And it's too bad that there's always this divisiveness, that somebody wants to own music or something. This is a gift from God, and all of it, to be honest, expresses something that someone needs to hear. Beethoven, to me, was so interesting because he, as a child, he grew up in a tough little household. His dad was violent and unpredictable, and if you read his letters and his autobiography, or his biography, he was, sometimes woken up in the middle of the night, and if his father, and he has to play and entertain, and if he didn't do it right, he would be in big trouble. Sorry, but I can relate to that on a very personal level. He had a brother. His brother was a pharmacist who had a nephew. He had a son, and that was Beethoven's nephew. When his brother died, Beethoven tried to have the parental rights of his mother removed so he could raise the son, because he wanted to raise the son. And the poor kid has to go to Beethoven's house, and he just keeps running away. He runs back to his mom, and Beethoven's fighting him, and the mom is suing him in court and finally gets the custody back. Just right out of today. But yet, here's this man composing this beautiful music. And I'll just play a little bit of one again. We're referencing the children's homes concert in November, some of the music. This is why I choose the music I choose, because it means something to me. Beethoven, you never hear about Beethoven as a Lutheran or as a Catholic, but he was a man of faith. He loved nature. He'd go for walks in nature. Joyful, joyful, we adore thee, right? He's writing this, just this celebration. So I like him because he was troubled and obviously pushed to extremes emotionally, but the music, his greatest gift to us was the music, but I think it was his greatest gift from God for himself, because you have to have a point of sanity, because the world, no matter what age you live in, is crazy. And I think then that if you find God's going to send you something that's going to become your point of sanity. And I'm a big believer in this whole shell thing, that God wraps his arms and his wings around you. The atmosphere is a shell. And within that shell, as you travel through this crazy world, there is something in there that just will absorb you and keep you connected to God. And so you don't get caught like Peter looking down at the water and being overwhelmed by it, because it is so easy to look down at the water and be overwhelmed, especially. And I say that especially today, but it is not the case. You know, people have been through wars and exoduses, a Holocaust. There's just nothing new about it. We just think we're the first ones to experience it. And so that's why it always goes back to God. You have to connect with God. You have peace with him. And then he's going to give you something. And who knows what it is, but for you, it's going to be a source of, it will just occupy your mind, and you will realize this is something from God. He says, you know, my works are studied by those who love me. And this is terrific, right? Because there's a logic to it. This leads you to the next step, to the next step. There's just nothing random about it, although we can never get to the very, very point of the beginning. So I like that, and I like when I teach music, I want the kids that I come in contact with to understand how it is that we learn, because if you don't want to learn, then you're going to have a tough time with this thing that God's given you, and that learning is a slow, curious process. And there are some things you have to learn at some points, and on and on and on. But basically, you have to be willing to make mistakes and not be criticized, just corrected and laughingly. My biggest thing is when a kid's playing a song, and they get a wrong note. It's not a different wrong note each time they play it. It's exactly the same wrong note, which to me is quite amazing. I never really thought about that when I was a kid. And then when I tell them that, they're amazed too, because they just think it's a wrong note. It's a wrong note. So no, it's specifically, you're not hitting the right note, you're hitting this note. And you can hit the right note just as consistently. You just have to acquire the habit of landing on the right note. And for that requires humor and just patience. And you can do it maybe 50 times, and it's not going to be enough, maybe 100 times. But if you enjoy what you're doing, that's okay, and then you get it. And then that, of course, now you're stronger to move on to the next things. And that in music requires so many different things have to be going on in your mind. You have to be thinking about time. You have to be balancing all the different voices. There's just, for a kid to go, is incredibly complicated, especially if they're 6 years old. That's incredibly complicated to have their fingers doing what they want, holding it for the right time. And so it's how we work. Is that God teaches us little things, and we become, without even realizing, say, wow, I guess I love this, right? And when things get frustrating, I said, well, I'm going to hang on because I love it, and the frustrations are going to lead me through it. So we don't give up. Something is fun. To be honest, fun is a device that God gives you so that you are willing to experience something. Come and do this. It's a lot of fun. And they try it, and it is fun. But shortly thereafter, if you start to study, it's no longer fun. It's something deeper and better. And so if something isn't fun, that's not a reason to stop. That was just to give you the experience. Now, this maybe is where God wants you to be. Maybe it's not. And you can leave it because you didn't enjoy it. But something's going to say, well, it's not fun anymore, but it's something different, and I want to learn it. And all of a sudden, you're in this world with God, and he's now, keep your eye on me, and we're going to go through life, and this thing is going to be how I'm going to protect you. I'm going to give you something creative to do, because all I do is create. So I'm never taking things from you. I'm always giving you things to help you be creative through me, and then in the end, you become, it just becomes beyond words. So it's the beauty of music, God, peace, faith. This is all the same thing in my world. So anyway, this piece by Beethoven, this is from I think the sixth, The Moonlight. Not a name he gave it. Someone else just called it that. And it starts out, of course, that is it's peaceful, but it's not cheery. It's calm. To me, it's like a calm after or before a storm. And I believe that a lot of his life was like that. He didn't know when, but yes, it was coming. And so that's as beautiful. The ending, it's like, maybe, I don't think if everything has gone haywire, or if he's in nature and there's a storm, but wow, he's up there. But in the middle of this sonata is just this little, it's one page, and I love it. And I just thought I would play that. And I hope all this rambling helped you. It's just delightful to me. It's like happiness, and I think he's in there, and God's in there with him, and that's the kind of this is gentle. You're his child, and when you're God's child, these are the things in your head. It's just too beautiful. I received a really nice letter in the mail earlier this week, and I was asked about a song. She said that they do it at the Vespers, I think up at Chaplain Hill Shelter Me, and would I sing it? I got this song, and I would like to use it for next week's devotion, if that's okay with you. It's a beautiful piece, and we did it at the services today. So thank you for that. I'm grateful. I just hope that you live your life connected to God, and he'll guide you through the world. And he'll just give you, some blessing. He'll give you something, or maybe more than one thing, but just that thing that you need to take you through the world. And you'll find that you're blessing people left and right, and you're not even knowing it. You're just grateful because, once again, God's using you to bless other people, but he cares deeply about you. So thank you, and have a terrific week.